Hey guys, Michael here from Dapper Raptor, and I'm going to cover an integration tutorial for the multiplayer survival game template, adding the Interactive Foliage system by Hulken into the template. Now this system is super simple to implement. It was actually designed with the MSGT in mind, so it's kind of follows along the same directory structure and everything like that. I will include a link both to the system as well as to this Hulken's written version of the tutorial, which is basically what I'm going to be following along and using to make this video. There will be one or two changes I'll add on, but I will highlight them as I go. So the first thing we need to do, I've got a blank version of the MSGT under 4.17.2, and I've also got the Interactive Foliage system under the same version. We want to right click on the Foliage system folder and click on Migrate. It'll tell you what it's going to migrate, and you just want to point to the folder that you're migrating to. So in this case, I've got the project we're using is MSGT Foliage tutorial, so we're going to just click on the content folder and click select folder. It'll tell you some files that were not copied. Don't stress about them, it's nothing important. So we can close that up, and first thing I want to mention is we're going to be editing a struct. Now, struct editing can be really risky in Unreal Engine, so I'd recommend backing up your project first. This is a very, very, very simple struct that we're editing. It's only got 4 values, and I can't imagine it would ever result in your project getting corrupted. But for the love of God, please back up your project and work with the main menu map. The reason for that is it has no resources loaded because it's a blank map, so the chances of corruption happening are much lower, even in this case where it's pretty much unlikely to happen anyway. So we want to go into the SGT folder, blueprints, and then game, and we want to open up survival controller. Like I said, the interactive foliage system was designed with the template in mind, so you're going to notice some similarities in the way things are done, starting with the fact that the entire system is contained to a component. So you can just add that component and we're more or less on our way. Now, I'm not going to go through all the settings and stuff in the system, but this trace length, you probably want to make sure that matches your inventory reach length, just so the player can't harvest further away. So we will do that. The default reach is 500, so we'll just change the trace length to 500 as well. Once that's done, we can open up this initialize function, so event begin player initialize. And we want to add in a little bit here. Basically just hold control, drag this in, and we want to call the init function to initialize this. And off player controller, just drag and get reference to self. So all this is doing is we are initialize interactive foliage system. Compile and save that. Next up, we want to open the get action type function here, and we want to add on a little bit of logic to the bottom here. Just move them out of the way. Copy a reference to get actor in, and in fact we'll copy the does implement interface as well. We need to make sure we change this to BPI foliage. Alright, ignore that. So off here we also want to go cast to interactive foliage, instanced foliage actor. So make sure it's this one. I did it on this one and it didn't work, and I'm actually redoing the tutorial because I stuffed that up. Drag that down to false there. And we want to use a branch, so hold B and click and get a branch, put that on failed and hook that up. So what we're doing here is actor in an instanced foliage actor, and if it is not, we just want to double check in case you've done some weird blueprints that use that interface. Does the actor use the BPI foliage interface? So this is kind of a fail safe just in case you don't do things quite right, but you still need it to work. So this guy can go here now, and we put the false on there. And then off the true, we just want to hold control, drag in a reference to this, and do server. So srv server trace. Just want to hook that guy up to that one. Double click there and hook the true up to that as well. So or perform if system server trace. And then that can go down into there. So what we're doing here is we go through all this get action type whenever you try to interact with anything. So say for instance a container, it calls a container event harvesting, it calls that. So you possibly want to remove this depending on what you're working with. But it goes through all that. So this is the logic for when we try and interact with an instanced foliage mesh. Instance foliage actor, sorry. And then it calls the appropriate logic in the interactive foliage system. So we can click compile and save that. And we want to close this up for the moment. But we do want to open up survival game state. Just window that for a second. Go back, go to foliage system, blueprint, and open up the foliage game state as well. And we want to copy paste all of this. So Control C, find a spot in here that's clear, Control V. Now before you hit compile, right click on this guy and just click create variable and make sure replicator is set to true. Then you should be able to compile and save. Yep, that's worked fine. So now we can close both of the game states. I'm just going to hit save all just to cover my bases. Next up we want to go into resources. No, not yet, sorry. We want to go into interface data. Just make sure to get this in the right order. So we want to go data, structs, and open up str resources. And we want to change this str reward from harvest to str sgt inventory entry, this one here. So not item, make sure it's entry. Once that's done, click save. We can close that guy. So then we want to go back up a level. Oh no, back up a couple of levels to get back into the interfaces folder and open up BPI foliage. We've got three functions here. The only one we need to touch is this one, get reward from foliage actor, and we just want to change this to that same struct, str sgt inventory entry. Click compile, save, and we can close that guy. We go back up a folder and go into resources, open up the blueprint master resource, and we want to change one or two things in here. So we want to find the, what is it? Get reward from foliage actor. So this guy here. First thing we need to do is just break that reference, right click on return node, hit refresh, and then we can drag and connect that up. If you don't hit refresh, you won't be able to do that. And that can now be closed. We should save though, definitely, always save. Okay, so next up, what we want to do is go into the foliage component. So back up a folder, we want to be in content foliage system blueprints, open up C-foliage, and you'll see straight away it's actually opened up to the right spot here. So we want to be inside of, oh wait, it hasn't opened up to the right spot. That should be fine. We hit compile. That has not worked. Why is that? Let's just refresh that. There we go. So if you get errors like that, that's all you want to do is refresh like that. This one here, however, will not work. We want to hit refresh, and that will actually break that. But that's fine because we don't need any of this bit here now. We can get rid of that. And that's got rid of our error. But what we want to do now is we want to get in here. There is a reference to the player controller. Hold control, drop that in. And we want to use one of the templates functions, which is get inventory. And you want to make sure it's from the controller. So we can drag that over there. And what this is doing is it is retrieving a reference to the inventory components. So as you can see, there's the player inventory and there's also the manager. So off the manager, we want to drag and go add to inventory. And what this allows us to do is actually add the results that we want. So when we call harvest, this will just add the item to the inventory. Add harvest reward to player inventory. We hook this back up to there. Now we will be adding another little bit in here after, but we'll continue with the written tutorial for now. We want to also open up replace instance with actor, and we want to find the bit, so not the bit that came up before, this bit here. We need to recreate this logic with our game state. So we're just going to use it as reference. We're going to cast to survival game state. And we're going to drag off here, and we want to remake these exact same nodes. So srv add instance mesh to array. We drag these guys up to there. We're even going to copy and paste that. We can delete that. Place that guy there. And off of this one again, and we want to do replicate. Same one here. And the difference here is just that this one is in the target is GS Foliage game state. This one is target is survival game state. That's all we're doing, is we're just changing the target. Unfortunately, you can't just point to the other game state cast node. So we can get rid of all this stuff here. Put this guy down there. This guy here. And we'll just neaten this up so it's a little bit easier to read in case we ever need to come back to it. There we go. I didn't copy paste the comment, but that's okay. So we compile, save, and we will close that for now. And we go into data and open up this data table. So this is the data table that tells you, okay, when I harvest a tree, this is the reward I get. Now the first thing to notice, we're done editing struct, so I'm actually going to open up the demo map from the template. So we'll just open this guy up. Now we're going to settle up to work with the trees we've already got. You can do it with any foliage layer obviously, but this is the layer we want to, basically we want to make it so we can get some wooden planks when we try to interact with these. So we go to foliage, and we can see by hovering over it, it's SM, SGT, plains, pine. That's the mesh that we're using. So we want to, on tree, change this one here. We don't need this second one. We're going to change this one to SM, SGT, plains, pine. That's our tree that we're using. So that means we can interact with the trees that are already in the demo map. We also want to change the reward when harvest, and we want to do that by changing the data table to the SGT items one, which is the inventory items, and setting the reward to consumable wood plank. We're going to give us 2 of them at quality 1.0. Now you'd probably only do 1, but there's a reason we're doing 2, and that's so that when we do the feedback widget we can make sure it's working, because it will say 2 times. Excuse me. So we save that and we close that up, and then finally the last thing we have to do to finish off the written tutorial is go back into our controller, close that guy and that guy, and we want to be at this one, the event begin play. On here we want to right click and go is local controller. Off of that we want to use a branch, so hold B and click. And if it is a local controller, we want to get game state, cast to survival game state, and from that we want to do CL remove foliage instances on client. So this is so we don't have a double up of instances, I believe. This is a function from the Interactive Foliage system. We copy and paste it over into the game state. So that's it. From there, we should actually have this working. So if we walk over to this tree, You can see there's nothing in the inventory. We harvest, and there we go. We've got 2 wood planks, and we can harvest a couple of times. And now the tree will fall over. And we've got 6 planks of wood. Can't harvest anymore. Says this resource is empty. Now, the only thing I don't like about this setup is when we harvest, we don't actually get any feedback to tell us we've harvested. It just goes into our inventory. So what we're going to quickly do is we're going to fix that. We're going to go into Content, Foliage System, Blueprints, and See Foliage. So this is additional on top of the written tutorial that Hulken's provided. Now in here we want to get to this point here. I'm just going to open up the reference piece I've got on this. So from here what we want to do is give ourselves a bit of room. Actually, we'll just do this logic up here. We won't worry about moving this all around. From here we want to go and break this, and we want to break this as well. So we've got a reference to the data table. On here we want to go data table, so we want to get data table row, and we want to set this to the items data table. Now where is that hooked up to? I want to hook that up to over there. Okay. So another step we need to do here is drag off of this guy, get HUD manager, and we want to make sure this guy is valid, because you might not be using my HUD manager from the template. So we'll hook that one up there. If it's not valid, we just go through to perform harvest and do nothing. If however it is valid, then we want to go up to this guy here. So it's going to get a little bit messy, bear with me. I can move all this over here so it's a little bit easier to follow. From there we want to drag this guy out and break that, and all we're actually interested in here is the name. So you can go through and clear all of them. I don't think Unreal has a way to unclear them all yet, which is frustrating. Nope, we're just going to leave it. So I would just leave that closed because that's all of the information there. We want to, from here, drag off of name and do append, and we want to add in 2 more pins. The third pin is just going to be X space, and the first pin we hook up to name. Second pin, second pin is hooked up to name. First one we just want to do something like success you received space. So you received whatever the item is times, so I'm going to add a space at the beginning there actually. I don't know if I've got one at the end. I do, I don't want that. And then all the way over here, quantity to that. And then the last one from our HUD manager here, we want to do update feedback. Just that one there. So I know this is a little bit messy, but we're just working with what we've got here. And then once update feedback is done, we're going to go back down to this guy. So row found goes to there, and if the row is not found, we just go back down to there. Okay, so let me run through what this does. So we drag off of the inventory manager to get a reference to the HUD manager, because the inventory has a reference to the HUD manager already that's set up. If you do not have a HUD manager in your controller, then it will be invalid. So if it's invalid, we just go through and ignore it. If it is valid, what we want to do is use the reward here to get what we're getting. So we retrieve the data table row that has the name of the product of the item, and we add that into the message as well as the quantity here, and we hook that guy up there. So the end result of that is that now when we interact with a tree, you see it says we received 2 wooden planks. And again, and again, and that tree is falling over. So that is that system all hooked up and ready. A little bit of lag. I'm not surprised, I've got 3 projects open and recording. But anyway, so that's the Interactive Foliage system. up and running in the MSGT. As you can see, it was quite simple. There's a number of steps, but it's not a difficult process. I will leave links to all the appropriate stuff in the description, and if there are any other integration tutorials, please feel free to let me, or any others that you'd like to see, let me know. I will say that I've got a couple already queued up, but things are a little bit crazy here at the moment, so I'm not sure on time. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, catch you later.